badge glinted briefly in the sunlight before it hit the pavement, dropped by Officer Daniel Carter in a moment of stunned realization. Just hours earlier, he'd been chuckling at an elderly man driving a beat-up Chevy pickup. Now, surrounded by federal agents and under the piercing stare of General Margaret Thompson, he knew his career was on the line. This is a story of justice, redemption, and the power of one man's dignity to spark change in a community. Let's dive into how a routine traffic stop in a sleepy American suburb became a national reckoning. It was a crisp autumn morning in Franklin, Tennessee, the kind of day where golden leaves drifted lazily from ancient oaks and the air carried the faint scent of wood smoke. Officer Daniel Carter adjusted his aviator sunglasses, tapping the steering wheel of his Franklin Police Department cruiser. Beside him, Officer Ryan Mitchell scrolled through his phone, while Officer Ethan Hayes lounged in the back, cracking jokes. They were patrolling Oakwood Heights, Franklin's most affluent neighborhood, where manicured lawns stretched behind wrought iron gates and Teslas gleamed in driveways. Quiet as a church on Monday, Mitchell said, barely looking up. Hayes grinned. Yeah, the worst crime here is probably someone's landscaper forgetting to trim the hedges. Carter was about to reply when he spotted something out of place. A rusted 1978 Chevy pickup, its paint chipped and exhaust coughing, creeping down the pristine street. Well, look at that, Carter said, sitting up. That thing's straight out of a scrapyard. Bet you $20 the driver's up to no good, Hayes said, leaning forward. Probably scoping out houses. Carter nodded and pulled out behind the truck. The vehicle moved slowly as if the driver was searching for an address. After tailing it for a block, Carter's patience wore thin. Come on, give me a reason, he muttered. Then he saw it, a faded American flag sticker on the rear windshield, slightly obscuring the view. Obstructed windshield, Carter declared, flipping on the cruiser's lights. The truck took its time pulling over, which Carter noted as failure to yield promptly. When it finally stopped, the officers approached, hands resting on their holsters, a precaution they rarely used in Oakwood Heights. The driver's door creaked open and a weathered hand gripping a carved wooden cane emerged. Out stepped William Bill Thompson, 76, a tall man with a stooped posture, silver hair cropped close, and eyes that carried the weight of a lifetime. License and registration, Carter demanded, his tone clipped. Bill's voice was calm, gravelly. May I ask why I've been stopped, officer? Carter pointed to the windshield. That sticker's blocking your view. State code violation. Bill glanced at the flag sticker, then back at Carter, his expression skeptical. I see. My license is in my wallet. May I reach for it? Slowly, Carter ordered, his voice sharper than necessary. As Bill carefully retrieved his wallet, Mitchell chimed in. This truck doesn't exactly scream Oakwood Heights. What are you doing here? I'm visiting my daughter, Bill replied evenly. She just moved to this neighborhood. The officers exchanged doubtful glances. Hayes circled the truck, peering inside. Nice ride, he said, sarcasm dripping. How long you had this relic? Since 79, Bill said, handing his license to Carter. Bought it new. It's old, but it runs. Carter scrutinized the license. William Thompson, you're a long way from your address across town. As I said, I'm visiting my daughter at 47 Willow Creek Drive, Bill repeated. She's expecting me. Ha! A small crowd of neighbors had begun to gather. A jogger slowed her pace, a man watering his lawn turned to watch, and a teenager started recording on her phone. Your daughter lives here? Carter asked, disbelief lacing his tone. What's she do to afford a place in Oakwood? Bill straightened slightly, pride flickering in his eyes. She's a general in the U.S. Army. Works at the Pentagon. Mitchell laughed outright. The Pentagon? Right, and my brother's running NASA. Hayes, now rummaging through the glove compartment without permission, pulled out registration papers and a faded VA card. Officer, Bill said firmly, I haven't consented to a search of my vehicle. Carter stepped closer, crowding Bill's space. Is this truck even yours? You didn't borrow it, did you? Bill's jaw tightened. I've owned it since 1979. The registration will confirm that. When Bill reached for his phone to call his daughter, Carter grabbed his wrist. Hands where I can see them, he snapped. Startled, Bill dropped his phone. Turn around, Carter ordered, pulling out handcuffs. You're being detained for resisting. Reasoning? Bill protested. I've done nothing wrong. But Carter was already cuffing him, the metal biting into Bill's wrists. The crowd grew, more phones recording. Is this necessary? A woman shouted from across the street. Carter ignored her, ordering Bill to sit on the curb. The elderly man struggled to comply, his cane useless beside him. Hayes approached with the registration. It checks out. Truck's his? Carter nodded, undeterred. We still need to verify this daughter story. Something's off. Bill looked up, his dignity unshaken. My daughter is Major General Margaret Thompson. You can verify that with the Department of Defense. Carter smirked. A general? Sure, and I'm the Attorney General. At the Pentagon, Major General Margaret Thompson, 52, sat at the head of a conference table, her 3 stars gleaming on her uniform. Her presence commanded respect, sharp eyes, poised posture, and a reputation for strategic brilliance. She was briefing senior officials on a cybersecurity threat when her aide, Captain Emily Larson, interrupted with a whisper. General, there's an emergency call from Franklin. It's about your father. Margaret's composure held, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. Admiral Brooks, take over, she said, exiting the room. What's happened? She asked Larson. A neighbor, Mrs. Linda Harper, called. Your father's been detained by police outside your new home. They've handcuffed him and he's on the curb. Margaret's face hardened. Get me the Franklin Police Department, now, and prep my helicopter. As Larson made arrangements, Margaret's mind raced to her childhood. Bill had raised her alone after her mother's death from leukemia when Margaret was 8. He'd worked as a mechanic by day, a night watchman, and a weekend diner cook to support her dreams. She remembered him, exhausted but present, helping with math homework, cheering at her track meets, teaching her resilience. You'll go further than I ever could, he'd said, but never forget your roots. Now, her father was handcuffed because his old truck didn't fit her upscale neighborhood. Margaret took the phone. Chief Thomas Bradley, this is Major General Margaret Thompson. I understand your officers have detained my father, William Thompson, outside my home on Willow Creek Drive. Bradley's tone was cautious. General, I don't have immediate details on this incident. Then get them, Margaret said, her voice like steel. My father's a 76-year-old veteran handcuffed for no reason. I'm en route to Franklin. I expect his cuffs removed, his property returned, and respect shown to him as a citizen and veteran. I'll be contacting the governor and mayor shortly. She ended the call and dialed General Nathan Carter at the National Guard. I need a presence in Franklin, not an intervention, but a presence. Back in Oakwood Heights, Bill sat on the curb, the sun warming his face. A tightness in his chest worried him, but he kept his expression steady. He'd faced worse. Vietnam, 1966-68, where he'd earned a Bronze Star for pulling 2 soldiers from a burning chopper. A neighbor offered him water, which Mitchell allowed, though drinking with cuffed hands was awkward. My chest is tight, Bill told Mitchell. My medication's in the truck. You'll be fine, Carter interrupted, though Mitchell looked uneasy. Another officer arrived, inspecting Bill's VA card. Vietnam, 1st Cavalry, he asked, showing respect. Yes, sir, Bill replied, 66 to 68. Before they could continue, Carter cut in. Enough chit-chat, we're taking him to the station for questioning. On what charge? Bill asked. Obstruction, Carter said vaguely, and possible trespassing. This is a public street, a neighbor shouted. Carter ignored her, leading Bill to the cruiser. The police car was stifling, and Bill's chest pain worsened. He focused on breathing, memories of Vietnam flashing through his mind, leading his squad through the jungle, saving lives under fire. He'd been respected then, a staff sergeant trusted by his men. Now, he was just an old man in a truck, dismissed by officers half his age. Margaret's helicopter roared toward Franklin, her aide coordinating with federal and state officials. The governor's office is aware, Larson reported. The FBI's field office is prepped for a civil rights investigation. Margaret nodded, her fury controlled but palpable. Ensure military police are at the hospital if my father needs medical attention. In Oakwood Heights, Sergeant Laura Bennett, a 12-year veteran, arrived at the scene. Neighbors were still gathered, angry. They arrested an old man for nothing, a woman said. He was just looking for his daughter's house. Bennett frowned. Anyone get video? A young man nodded, holding up his phone. They mocked him, called his truck junk, said he didn't belong here. Bennett's radio crackled. All units, military personnel inbound to Central Precinct. She checked her computer, her heart sinking as she saw the address Bill had given matched a property owned by Major General Margaret Thompson. This is bad, she muttered, radioing Chief Bradley. At Franklin Central Hospital, paramedics rushed Bill, now unconscious, into the ER. 76-year-old male, possible heart attack, the lead paramedic reported. Dr. Sarah Coleman, the ER chief, took charge. Get him to cardiac care. EKG, enzymes, prep the cath lab. A nurse found Bill's VA card. Dr. Coleman, he's a Bronze Star recipient, Vietnam. Coleman's eyes softened. Close the blinds. Call the VA. Tell them we have a hero in crisis. Officers Carter and Mitchell tried to follow, but Coleman stopped them. He's in my custody now. Wait outside. Outside, news vans gathered as cell phone videos of Bill's detention went viral with hashtags like Justice for Bill and Veteran Mistreated. Inside, Bill stabilized but remained unconscious. Margaret's helicopter landed, and she stormed into the hospital, her uniform drawing stare. General Thompson, I'm Dr. Sarah Coleman, the doctor said. Your father had a heart attack, likely stress-induced. He's stable but critical. Margaret's composure faltered as she saw her father, frail and wired to monitors. I'm here, Dad, she whispered, taking his hand. To Coleman, she said, I need a report on whether the stress of his detention triggered this. Already noted, Coleman replied. The timing strongly suggests it. At Franklin Police Headquarters, Chief Bradley sweated as Margaret's convoy arrived. The viral videos, coupled with Bill's status as a veteran and Margaret's rank, had turned the stop into a national scandal. Body camera footage showed Carter's disrespect, the unnecessary cuffs, and the ignored chest pain. In the conference room, Margaret faced Carter, Mitchell, and Hayes. Carter stood defiantly while the others looked ashamed. I've reviewed your reports, Margaret said, her voice icy. Now let's see the body camera footage. The video played, exposing Carter's dismissive attitude and the group's failure to act on Bill's medical distress. Mitchell admitted, I should have called for help sooner. I'm sorry. Hayes added, I searched the truck without consent. It was wrong. Carter, however, doubled down. I followed procedure for a suspicious vehicle. Margaret's eyes narrowed. My father, William Thompson, saved lives in Vietnam, raised me alone, and worked 3 jobs to give me a future. You saw an old truck and assumed he was a criminal. She displayed data showing Carter's disproportionate stops of black drivers. This isn't procedure. It's bias. By morning, the story dominated national news. Vietnam hero suffers heart attack after police harassment. Bill woke to find Margaret at his side. You didn't need to come, he rasped. Nothing's more important than you, she said. At a press conference, the mayor promised a full investigation. Mitchell gave a tearful interview admitting his failure to intervene. Hayes resigned, vowing to confront his biases. Carter, unapologetic, was fired after the footage was released. Bill requested a meeting with the officers. In a hospital conference room, he shared his life, his wife's death, his Vietnam service, raising Margaret. To Carter, he revealed a connection. He'd saved Carter's uncle in Vietnam. Carter's defiance crumbled. I'm sorry, he said, shaking Bill's hand. 6 months later, Bill stood with Margaret at a ceremony outside the police station. The department had implemented bias training, medical emergency protocols, and a civilian oversight board. Bill's truck was now in a museum exhibit on racial justice. He launched the Thompson Foundation for Justice, funded by a police settlement to support veterans and profiling victims. Bill addressed new police recruits, sharing his rejected 1965 Police Academy application due to race. "Your badge is a symbol of trust," he said. "Honor it." Chief Bradley presented Bill with an honorary badge. A young recruit, Jamal Carter, inspired by Bill's story, approached him. "I want to be a cop to make things right," he said. Bill smiled. "That's how change happens." As sunset bathed Franklin in gold, Bill and Margaret sat on her porch, reflecting. "We all judge by appearances," Bill said. "The question is whether we look deeper." The air in Franklin, Tennessee crackled with tension 6 months after William Bill Thompson's harrowing traffic stop. The town, once known for its quaint charm and historic charm, was now a focal point of national reckoning. Bill's story, a 76-year-old Vietnam hero handcuffed, humiliated, and nearly lost to a heart attack, had ignited a firestorm. His daughter, Major General Margaret Thompson, had turned a personal injustice into a movement for change. But the journey was far from over. As winter's first snow dusted the oaks of Oakwood Heights, a new chapter unfolded, one that would test the limits of forgiveness, expose raw wounds, and bring a community to its knees in tears. The Franklin Community Center was packed to the rafters on a frigid December evening. Folding chairs groaned under the weight of a diverse crowd, black and white, young and old, police officers in civilian clothes mingling uneasily with activists clutching signs that read, "Justice for Bill." At the front, a modest stage held a podium, a projector screen, and a single chair where Bill Thompson sat, his cane resting against his knee. His face, weathered but resolute, carried the quiet strength of a man who'd faced death and chosen to live for something greater. Margaret stood beside him, her army uniform replaced by a simple black sweater, though her presence still commanded the room. She adjusted the microphone, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Tonight we're here to launch the Thompson Foundation for Justice and Reconciliation, but more than that, we're here to have a conversation, one that's long overdue." The crowd hushed as the lights dimmed. A projector flickered to life, displaying a grainy photo of Bill in Vietnam, 1966, his young face grim but determined, standing beside a burning helicopter. "This is my father," Margaret said, "a man who risked everything for his country only to be treated as a criminal in his own hometown." Murmurs rippled through the audience, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Bill leaned forward, his voice gravelly but clear. "I didn't ask for this fight. But when you're cuffed on a curb at 76, your heart failing and your dignity stripped away, you realize silence isn't an option. I'm here because I believe in second chances, for people, for communities, for this country." The screen shifted to footage of the traffic stop, leaked body camera clips showing Officer Daniel Carter's sneer, Officer Ryan Mitchell's hesitation, and Officer Ethan Hayes's unauthorized search of Bill's truck. Gasps echoed as the video captured Bill's labored breathing, his plea for medication ignored. A woman in the front row wiped tears from her cheeks. A young black man clenched his fists, whispering, "That could have been my grandpa." Then came the unexpected. Bill raised a hand, signaling the video to pause. "I could have hated those officers," he said. "I had every right to. But hate doesn't heal. Talking does. That's why I asked them to meet me, to see me as a man, not a threat." The screen displayed a new image. Bill in a hospital conference room, frail but upright, showing a photo album to Carter, Mitchell, and Hayes. The crowd leaned forward as Bill recounted the meeting, his voice breaking slightly. "I showed them my life. My wife, Sarah, who died too young. My daughter, Margaret, who I raised alone. My squad in Vietnam, where I learned that courage isn't about color, it's about heart." He paused, eyes scanning the room. "And then I learned something about Officer Carter, the man I pulled from a burning chopper in '66, James Carpenter. He was Carter's uncle. I saved his life. And 50 years later, his nephew put me in cuffs." The room erupted in stunned whispers. A white man in a flannel shirt shook his head, muttering, "No way." A black teenager turned to her mother, eyes wide. Margaret stepped forward, her voice trembling with pride and pain. My father didn't just survive that day. He chose to teach, to forgive, to build bridges where others saw only walls. But the story wasn't finished. Bill gestured to the side of the stage where a young man in a crisp police academy uniform stood nervously. This is Jamal Carter, Daniel Carter's cousin. He's here to share his own story. Jamal, 22, stepped to the podium, his hands shaking as he gripped the microphone. Growing up, I heard stories about my Uncle Jimmy, how a black sergeant named Bill Thompson saved him in Vietnam. I never thought I'd meet that man or that my own cousin would wrong him. His voice cracked. Daniel's actions shamed our family, but Mr. Thompson's forgiveness, it changed me. I'm joining the Franklin Police Department to be the kind of officer he deserved that day. Tears streamed down Jamal's face as he turned to Bill. Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry for what my cousin did, and I promise to honor your name with my badge. Bill rose, leaning heavily on his cane, and embraced Jamal. The crowd surged to its feet, applause mingling with sobs. A white woman in the back clutched her husband's hand, whispering, "This is what healing looks like." But the moment was shattered by a voice from the crowd. "Why, forgive him," a young black man shouted, standing near the exit. "Carter, it didn't just stop you, Mr. Thompson. It could have killed you. Why let him off the hook?" The room fell silent, all eyes on Bill. He met the man's gaze, his expression softening. "Son, I hear you. I've felt that anger. In 63, I was beaten for sitting at a whites-only counter. In 69, I came home from war to signs saying no blacks hired. But I learned something. Holding hate in your heart is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Forgiveness isn't for Carter, it's for me, for my daughter, for you, so we can build a future worth living." The young man's shoulders slumped, tears welling in his eyes. A woman beside him touched his arm, whispering, "He's right." Slowly he sat down, the weight of Bill's words sinking in. Across town in a dimly lit bar, Daniel Carter sat alone, nursing a whiskey. His badge was gone. His career ended after a disciplinary hearing exposed his pattern of biased stops. The TV above the bar played clips from the community center event, Bill's voice echoing, "Change happens one heart at a time." Carter's jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of shame. Beside him, a man in a leather jacket leaned over. "You got a raw deal, Carter. That old man played the race card and ruined you." Carter stared into his glass, then shook his head. "No, I ruined myself. I saw a black man in a truck and assumed the worst. I didn't listen when he said he was dying." He pushed the drink away. "He saved my uncle's life, and I nearly took his." The man scoffed, but Carter stood, leaving a crumpled bill on the bar. As he stepped into the snowy night, his phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. "Come to the community center. You need to see this." Carter hesitated, then shoved the phone in his pocket and started walking. Back at the community center, Margaret introduced Ryan Mitchell, who'd become an advocate for police reform. Mitchell, his voice thick with regret, addressed the crowd. "I stood by while Mr. Thompson suffered. I can't undo that, but I can fight for change. I've helped design new training to recognize bias and prioritize medical emergencies. It's not enough, but it's a start." Ethan Hayes followed, announcing his new role with the Veterans Organization. "Mr. Thompson's service in Vietnam opened my eyes. I'm working to connect vets with law enforcement, to build respect on both sides." The crowd applauded, but the night's true climax was yet to come. Bill rose again, his breath slightly labored from the effort. The Thompson Foundation isn't just about justice. It's about reconciliation. Tonight, we're unveiling our first initiative, the Veterans Bridge Project, pairing retired soldiers with young officers to mentor them in empathy and service. He gestured to the screen, which showed his 1978 Chevy pickup, now restored and displayed in the Franklin History Museum. "That truck was my pride and joy. Now it's a symbol that even the most ordinary things can spark extraordinary change." As the crowd cheered, the doors at the back creaked open. Daniel Carter slipped in, his coat dusted with snow, his face a mask of conflict. He lingered in the shadows, unnoticed by most, except Bill, whose eyes locked onto him. Without breaking stride, Bill continued, I've lived long enough to know that no one's beyond redemption. Not me, not you, not even those who've hurt us. Margaret noticed Carter and tensed, but Bill placed a hand on her arm. Let him stay, he whispered. She nodded, trusting her father's heart. Bill's voice grew softer, more intimate, as if speaking to Carter alone. In Vietnam, I saw men change under fire. Some found courage they didn't know they had. Others found it later, in the quiet moments when they faced their mistakes. I believe in those moments. He paused, his gaze steady on Carter. I'm not asking anyone to forget what happened. I'm asking you to believe that what comes next can be better. Carter's composure cracked. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. A black woman nearby, her face streaked with tears, reached out and touched his arm. It's okay, she whispered. You're here now. The crowd, sensing the moment's weight, rose in a standing ovation, not just for Bill, but for the possibility of redemption. Margaret's eyes glistened as she looked at her father, the man who taught her that power lies not in vengeance, but in hope. Jamal stepped forward, helping Bill back to his chair, and the two shared a quiet smile, a bond forged in shared history and shared dreams. The next morning, Franklin woke to headlines. Vietnam Heroes' Forgiveness Sparks Community Healing. The Thompson Foundation received an outpouring of donations, enough to fund legal aid for profiling victims and scholarships for veterans' children. Bill's truck exhibit drew crowds to the museum, each visitor leaving with a story of awakening. Carter, shaken by the night's events, met privately with Bill a week later. In a quiet coffee shop, he confessed, I don't know how to live with what I did to you. Bill sipped his coffee, his eyes kind but unflinching. You live with it by making it right. Not for me, but for the next person you meet. That's how you honor your uncle and yourself. Carter nodded, tears falling freely. I'm going to therapy, learning about bias, and I'm volunteering with your foundation if you'll have me. Bill extended his hand. Welcome aboard, son. On Christmas Eve, Bill and Margaret stood before a small crowd at the museum, unveiling a new plaque beside the truck, in honor of William Thompson, whose courage and compassion turned pain into progress. As snow fell outside, Bill addressed the group, his voice strong despite his frailty. This truck carried me through war, loss, and injustice, but it also carried me here, to all of you. Never doubt that one person, one heart, can change the world. The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping tears, others embracing strangers. Margaret hugged her father, whispering, You did it, Dad. No, Bill said, smiling. We did. The snow fell harder now in Franklin, Tennessee, blanketing Oakwood Heights in a deceptive calm. It was February 2026, 2 months after William Bill Thompson's powerful community center speech had set the town ablaze with hope. The Thompson Foundation for Justice and Reconciliation was thriving. Its Veterans Bridge project pairing retired soldiers with rookie cops to foster empathy. Bill's 1978 Chevy pickup, now a museum centerpiece, drew thousands, each visitor carrying away a spark of his message. Change begins with one heart. But beneath the surface, shadows lingered. Old wounds, unspoken fears, and a community teetering on the edge of transformation or collapse. Tonight, a single event would push Franklin to its breaking point, leaving everyone, from Bill to his former tormentor, Daniel Carter, facing a choice that could redefine their future. The Franklin Civic Auditorium glowed under strings of warm lights, packed with over 1,000 residents for the Thompson Foundation's first gala. The room buzzed with anticipation, a melting pot of faces, black, white, young, old, police, and activists, united by Bill's story. On stage, Bill, now 77, stood tall despite his cane, his silver hair catching the spotlight. Beside him, Major General Margaret Thompson radiated pride, her civilian dress doing little to dim her commanding presence. The crowd hushed as Bill stepped to the microphone, his voice steady but weighted with purpose. When I was cuffed on that curb, he began. I could have let anger win. Instead, I chose to talk, to listen, to see the humanity in those who wronged me. That's why we're here tonight. Not to dwell on pain, but to build a future where no one's judged by their skin or their truck. The audience erupted in applause, but Bill raised a hand, silencing them. Change isn't easy. It's messy, painful, and sometimes it demands more than we think we can give. But I believe in Franklin. I believe in us. As he spoke, the projector behind him flashed images. Bill in Vietnam, dragging wounded soldiers to safety, a young Margaret at her West Point graduation, the rusted Chevy now gleaming in the museum. The crowd was spellbound, some wiping tears, others gripping hands across racial and social divides. A young black girl in the front row clutched a photo of Bill, her hero, whispering to her mother, "He's like Grandpa." Margaret took the stage, her voice thick with emotion. My father taught me that dignity isn't given, it's earned through every choice we make. Tonight we honor his legacy with the Veterans Bridge Project, which has already trained 50 officers to see people, not stereotypes. She introduced former officer Ryan Mitchell, now a national advocate for police reform. Mitchell, his face etched with sincerity, shared his journey. I failed, Mr. Thompson, that day. I stood by while he suffered, but his forgiveness gave me a chance to do better. Now I'm helping departments across America rewrite their training manuals, ensuring no one else is ignored when they cry for help. The crowd cheered, but a ripple of unease stirred as Ethan Hayes stepped forward. Having left the force to work with veterans, Hayes spoke softly. Mr. Thompson's Bronze Star taught me what service really means. I'm building bridges between cops and vets so we can honor heroes like him every day. The gala reached its peak when Jamal Carter, Daniel Carter's cousin and a new police recruit, took the stage. Mr. Thompson saved my Uncle Jimmy in Vietnam, he said, voice trembling. His courage inspired me to wear this badge with honor. I'm here to make sure no one else feels what he felt that day. He turned to Bill, eyes shining. Thank you, sir, for giving me a purpose. The room rose in a standing ovation, tears streaming down faces. A white retiree in the back whispered to his wife, "This is what America should be." But the night's fragile harmony was about to shatter. Outside, under the auditorium's glowing marquee, a group of protesters gathered, their signs reading, "No justice, no peace," and "Fire all biased cops." Led by Marcus Tate, a 25-year-old activist whose brother had been profiled by police, they chanted, "Bill's story isn't enough. We need systemic change." Their voices carried into the hall, drawing nervous glances from attendees. Inside, Bill noticed the commotion and whispered to Margaret, "Let me talk to them." She hesitated, her protective instincts flaring, but nodded, trusting his heart. As Bill stepped outside, leaning on his cane, the protesters fell silent, their anger tempered by respect for the man whose story had sparked their fire. "Marcus," Bill said, recognizing the young leader from community meetings, "I hear you. I've lived your pain. Tell me what you need." Marcus's voice was raw. "Mr. Thompson, you forgave those cops, but what about the rest of us? My brother's still harassed every time he drives through Oakwood. Your foundation's great, but it's not stopping the next stop, the next cuffs, the next heart attack." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Bill met Marcus's gaze. "You're right. Forgiveness doesn't erase the system, but it's a start. Come inside. Join us. Help us shape what's next." Marcus hesitated, his fist clenched. Then slowly, he lowered his sign. "All right, Mr. Thompson, but this better not be just talk." As Bill led Marcus and a few protesters inside, the gala resumed, but the tension lingered. Margaret announced a new initiative, a community task force to oversee police reforms, with Marcus invited to serve as a youth representative. The crowd applauded, but the night's true test was yet to come. Across town in a cramped apartment, Daniel Carter sat hunched over a laptop watching a live stream of the gala. His firing from the Franklin Police Department had left him a pariah, his name synonymous with shame. The whiskey bottle beside him was half empty, but his eyes were clear, haunted by Bill's words from their hospital meeting. See me as a human being. The revelation that Bill had saved his uncle in Vietnam had broken something in him, but not enough to change his path until now. His phone buzzed with a text from Jamal. "You should be here, cousin. It's not too late." Carter's jaw tightened. He'd avoided the community center event, too raw to face Bill or the town's judgment, but the live stream showed Bill embracing Jamal. And something stirred, a flicker of the courage his uncle had once described in Bill. Carter grabbed his coat and headed into the snow, driven by a need he couldn't name. As he neared the auditorium, he saw the protesters' signs, heard their chants, and felt the weight of his actions anew. He slipped inside unnoticed and stood at the back, his heart pounding. On stage, Bill was sharing a final story, his voice soft but piercing. In '66, I was captured in Vietnam. For 3 months, I was a POW, beaten, starved, told I'd never see home. But I held on to one thing, the belief that my life mattered, that I could make a difference. That's what kept me alive then, and it's what keeps me fighting now. The crowd was silent, tears glistening in the dim light. A black woman in the third row sobbed quietly, clutching her son's hand. A white cop in civilian clothes bowed his head, grappling with his own biases. Margaret's eyes shone with pride, but also fear. She knew her father's health was fragile, and this fight was taking its toll. Bill continued, "I don't have all the answers, but I know change starts when we see each other's hearts. I forgave Officer Carter not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace, and I believe he can find his way too." At that moment, a figure stepped from the shadows. Daniel Carter, his face gaunt and eyes red, walked toward the stage. The crowd gasped, some tensing, others whispering. Margaret moved instinctively to shield her father, but Bill raised a hand. "Let him speak," he said. Carter climbed the steps, his voice shaking. "Mr. Thompson, I don't belong here. I took your dignity, nearly took your life. I've spent months hating myself, hating you for exposing me. But tonight, watching you, hearing you," he choked, tears falling. "You saved my uncle, and you're still saving people, even me. I don't know how to fix what I did, but I'm here to try." The room was frozen, every eye on Bill. He stood slowly, his cane trembling under his weight. The silence stretched, agonizing, until Bill extended his hand. "Welcome back, Daniel," he said. "The work starts now." Carter took his hand, sobbing openly, and the crowd erupted, not in applause, but in a collective release of emotion. Marcus Tate, seated near the front, stood, tears streaming down his face. "This is what I needed to see," he said, voice breaking. "Not just words, action." But the moment was cut short. Bill swayed, his face paling as he clutched his chest. Margaret caught him as he stumbled, her voice sharp with panic. "Dad, someone call a doctor." The crowd surged forward, a paramedic from the audience rushing to the stage. "He's having another cardiac event," she shouted, checking Bill's pulse. "We need to get him to the hospital now." As paramedics wheeled Bill out, Margaret stayed by his side, her hand gripping his. Carter, still trembling, followed, whispering, "Please, God, let him be okay." Marcus joined them, his earlier anger replaced by fear for the man who'd become a symbol of hope. At Franklin Central Hospital, Dr. Sarah Coleman met the ambulance, her face grim. "He's stable for now, but this is serious," she told Margaret. "The stress of tonight, combined with his previous heart attack, has pushed him to the edge." Margaret nodded, her composure cracking. "Will he make it?" Coleman hesitated. "We're doing everything we can. He's a fighter, but the next few hours are critical." In the waiting room, an unlikely group gathered. Margaret, Marcus, Jamal, Mitchell, Hayes, and Carter. They sat in silence, each wrestling with their role in Bill's story. Marcus broke the quiet, his voice raw. I pushed him too hard out there. I didn't mean for this. Margaret touched his shoulder. You challenged him to keep fighting. That's what he lives for. Carter, staring at the floor, spoke softly. I caused this. If I hadn't stopped him that day, Mitchell cut him off. We all failed him, Daniel. But he's still fighting because he believes in us. Don't give up on that. Hours later, Coleman emerged. He's awake, she said, a small smile breaking through. He's asking for all of you. In Bill's room, he lay connected to monitors, his face pale but his eyes bright. Don't look so glum, he rasped, managing a weak smile. I've been through worse. Margaret took his hand, tears falling. Dad, you scared us. I'm not done yet, Bill said, looking at each face. Margaret, his rock. Marcus, the fire of youth. Jamal, the hope of tomorrow. Mitchell and Hayes, the reformed, and Carter, the broken, seeking redemption. This fight isn't about me. It's about what we build together.
He turned to Carter. You showed up tonight. That's the first step. Don't stop walking. Carter nodded, unable to speak. Marcus stepped forward, his voice thick. Mr. Thompson, I'm in. I'll join your task force. Make sure the system changes. Bill's smile widened. That's my boy. As dawn broke over Franklin, the hospital room filled with a fragile hope. But the future was uncertain. Would Bill's heart hold out long enough to see his vision realized? Could Carter find redemption, or would his guilt consume him? Would Marcus's passion for justice unite or divide the community? And would Franklin become a beacon of change or slip back into old divides? Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the town in a clean slate. The Thompson Foundation's work was just beginning, its impact rippling far beyond Franklin. News trucks lined the hospital lot, reporters clamoring for updates. Social media buzzed with Bill Lives and Change Starts Here, the nation watching as one man's courage held a mirror to its soul. The story wasn't over. Bill's fight, Margaret's resolve, and a community's awakening hung in the balance, waiting for the next chapter to be written. By them, by us, by anyone brave enough to choose hope over hate.